What did I miss? Welcome to Crime Bites, where we dissect the most chilling, mysterious, and thought-provoking criminal cases of our time. I'm your host, Carrie Drobin, a multi-published award-winning true crime author, former prosecutor, and criminal defense attorney. Today, we're diving into a case that shook the nation to its core, the brutal murder of Lauren Giddings, and the man responsible, Stephen McDaniel. At first glance, McDaniel seemed like just another quiet law student, but beneath the surface, there were warning signs that no one fully understood until it was too late. Stephen McDaniel was a law student at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, and by all accounts, he was a quiet, introverted guy who kept to himself. He didn't stand out, didn't make waves, but what if I told you that underneath that calm exterior, a predator lurked? A man capable of committing a horrific act that would forever change his life and the lives of those around him. Lauren Giddings was McDaniel's neighbor, a law student just like him. She had dreams, aspirations, and a future ahead of her. But those dreams were shattered on a summer day in 2011 when McDaniel brutally murdered her in an act of violence that shocked everyone who knew him, or thought they did. What if the signs of this tragedy were there all along? What if McDaniel's behavior, however subtle, was a red flag? And if so, could society have noticed it earlier? Let's go back to Mercer University. McDaniel blended in as a quiet student. Nothing unusual about him, right? But what his classmates would later recall about him was unsettling. Stephen was obsessed with Lauren. He wasn't her friend, yet he kept inserting himself into her life. Friends of Lauren described him as someone who would hover around her, always present, but never there. You know the type. But then things escalated, and McDaniel admitted to spying on Lauren, peeping through her windows, watching her movements. I mean, this wasn't just a harmless crush, it was surveillance. Psychologists call this stalking behavior, and it's one of the clearest red flags for violence. He even confessed, "I would go to her window at night just to see her." At first, maybe it sounds like an odd obsession, but peeping, tracking someone's movements, spying on their private life, those are not behaviors to dismiss as harmless. They're serious warning signs, and McDaniel wasn't just socially awkward. He was isolating himself from others. He was struggling to form connections, and his behavior often made people uncomfortable. But there's a key detail here. He didn't just crack awkward jokes. He talked about violence, dark, twisted hypotheticals about murder. And at one point, McDaniel casually asked his classmates, "How would you dispose of a body?" I mean, in theory, of course. I mean, did anyone take him seriously? Probably not. It was easy to brush off his dark humor, but looking back, those comments were chilling. I mean, jokes about death and violence are never jokes, right? They're often windows into deeper, more dangerous thoughts. And now, here's where things get truly unsettling. After Lauren's body was found, McDaniel showed up on television, feigning concern. Okay, who does this remind us of? Scott Peterson. He stood outside her apartment complex and said with a flat, robotic tone, "I don't know where she could be. No one has seen her since Saturday, but she's as nice a person as there is." I mean, who says stuff like that? No emotion, no empathy, just cold, dispassionate words. And this is where the mask of normalcy slips. It's classic psychopathy, showing no genuine emotion while pretending to care. Experts say people like McDaniel are often very good at wearing a mask of normalcy. They know how to manipulate those around them into thinking they're harmless. And the investigation confirmed it, right? As authorities dug deeper into McDaniel's life, they uncovered a disturbing history. He'd been visiting websites about dismemberment, how to commit the perfect murder. He had written disturbing stories about stalking and violence and murder and submitting these to professors. I mean, these weren't idle hobbies. They were a growing fantasy, one he was destined to act on. And McDaniel was a master of psychological masking. I mean, he presented himself as just another law student. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Hiding his darker tendencies behind a facade. His law school application didn't reveal his true nature either. I mean, his essays likely showcased him as driven, focused, no red flags, nothing alarming. His ability to present himself as a regular student allowed him to integrate into academic and professional settings without raising any suspicion. It was like seamless. But in hindsight, there were signs. And McDaniel's obsession with Lauren, his disturbing hypothetical questions, his social isolation, his essays, these could have been picked up on. And if we were to scrutinize his application materials today, there might have been clues, right? Lack of emotional depth, strange preoccupations, but law schools don't have the resources to screen for psychological instability, and they're not going to do it. They're focused on academic success, but that's the problem, right? It's a delicate balance between protecting public safety and respecting privacy, but maybe looking at the whole person to see if they're even qualified to be a lawyer. Maybe it's time to rethink how we screen law students, right? Could something like emotional depth, a deeper character reference, or a behavioral interview screen people like McDaniel out? Could we detect these red flags before it's too late, before Lauren Giddings loses her life? Right after her murder, investigators uncovered even more chilling details. Surveillance footage, which showed McDaniel going through her trash. Digital evidence revealed that he had been researching how to kill, how to dispose of a body, how to dismember someone. It was all there, clear as day. And here's the part that gets me, the part that should have sent every alarm bell ringing. After Lauren's disappearance, McDaniel offers to help search for her. He even pretends to be concerned. This is classic psychopathy 101, but his actions, his unemotional demeanor, his strange monosyllabic responses when asked about Lauren's whereabouts, these are signs that he knew exactly what had happened because he'd murdered her. And later, when confronted about it, he confessed. He strangled her and then he dismembered her body. He pled guilty and he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. But McDaniel hasn't disappeared from the spotlight. In recent years, he's been fighting from behind bars. He's been arguing that his lawyers were ineffective, right? That he deserves a new trial, a new hearing. It's a strange twist, but in cases like this, is it really surprising? It's post-conviction. The story of Stephen McDaniel is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous people blend in so well, and we don't see them for what they really are. His obsession with Lauren, his isolation, his odd comments about violence, they're all red flags, but no one took them seriously until it was too late. So what can we learn from this, right? It's crucial to pay attention to the signs, to trust your intuition. Early behaviors like obsession, social isolation, inappropriate humor, fascination with violence, we cannot afford to ignore them because sometimes those small clues lead to the darkest of outcomes. You want to know what I find really chilling about McDaniel? Is that he grew up in suburbia. His parents were reportedly supportive, involved in his life. There's little evidence to suggest there was any significant childhood trauma or abuse, and which some defense attorneys might consider mitigating factors in this case. His family life seems to have been relatively typical. No obvious signs of neglect or extreme dysfunction. That's horrifying. So defense attorneys might argue that his fixation on violence and a lack of impulse control were symptoms of a deeper psychological disorder, right? Some kind of mental illness. I would argue narcissism or psychopathy, which is not a mental illness. It's actually the kiss of death in a defense litigation. But, when we look at the case of Stephen McDaniel, we can't help but notice the chilling similarities to other infamous criminals like Ted Bundy and Bryan Kohberger, both of whom, I've talked about ad nauseum, but they seem to have led normal lives while secretly harboring violent tendencies. These men on the surface appeared to be respectable, even high-achieving individuals, but underneath that mask of normalcy, there was something darker at play. Bryan Kohberger, right? The suspect in the tragic Idaho murders had a fascination with criminal behavior. He was even studying criminology, much like McDaniel was pursuing law. Now, we don't know all the details about Kohberger's mindset yet, but there are some eerie parallels. Both men used their academic pursuits as a kind of shield, a way to project an image of respectability onto the public while hiding a darker side. Both were reportedly socially awkward. Both seemed to have a fascination with crime. McDaniel even had this strange habit of asking classmates about how to get away with murder, right? Hypotheticals, right? As if he were testing the waters for a future crime. Kohberger similarly appeared to have a deep interest in criminal investigations. He was taking a criminology class, right? He wanted to know the psychology behind violent acts. It's like they were both trying to figure out the perfect way to commit a murder while studying themselves, right? and also going unnoticed. I mean, let's not forget that both Bundy and McDaniel also exhibited a chilling detachment after their crimes were committed, right? We saw this with McDaniel, where he's kind of got a flat affect after Lauren Giddings' body is discovered, dismembered, right? The torso. I mean, he stands outside her apartment complex and offers to help in the search for her, all while knowing full well what he'd done. I mean, this is the cold, robotic behavior of a psychopath. We also saw this from Bundy, who, after his crimes, would often appear to be perfectly normal, calm, even compassionate when talking about his victims who he slaughtered. I mean, it's as if the weight of what they had done never truly hit them. And that's a key trait of psychopathy. In the end, what we're seeing in McDaniel, Bundy, and Kohlberger is the same thing. It's a disturbing pattern of someone who can maintain a mask of normalcy, blend into society, manipulate those around him, all while secretly living with violent thoughts and, in some cases, acting on them. So what do we take away from this? I mean, maybe it's that we need to look beyond the surface when evaluating people. Maybe it's that we need to take certain behaviors, no matter how subtle, more seriously. Because as we've seen in these cases, those who hide their true selves behind a mask of normalcy are often the ones who are the most dangerous. Thanks for listening to Crime Bites. If you liked what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. It helps me grow and bring you more Crime Bites. And check out my website, carriedrobin.com. Until then, stay informed, stay vigilant, and above all, stay safe.